In August of 2014, relatively unknown game developer Scott Cawthon released a game called Five Nights at Freddy's, his first attempt at making a horror game. This relatively unknown indie horror game would eventually spring into one of the most successful horror franchises of all time. We're looking back on Five Nights at Freddy's. This is the PlayStation 4 version played on PS5, but this game does have a console port and it's very, very decent, so let's get into it. You find out that there's a brand new opening as a security guard during the night shift at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and you accept this job, and this is your first ever summer job. Now you'll find that there are lights, doors, and most importantly, the camera that you can use. You're being told that the animatronic characters begin moving around at night, and it's your job to prevent them from entering your office, otherwise they'll stuff you into a suit. You have 4 animatronics to keep up with: Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. Each of these animatronics do behave differently, and there's different ways of dealing with them, but 2 of them are very similar to one another, and that's Bonnie and Chica. At the beginning of each night, all the animatronics will start on the stage, and Foxy will be inside of Pirate's Cove. But over the course of the night, while watching the cameras and just monitoring what's going on, you might notice that some of the animatronics will begin to move over the course of the night. Either Bonnie or Chica can move first. And whenever they begin moving, you'll hear footsteps off into the distance, and then the cameras will even go out if they move while you're looking at the cameras. When they're getting closer and closer to the office, you'll understand that the footsteps get louder, and plus some ambience begins playing. And then once they make it to the corner, they're basically one step away before they show up into your door. When they show up at your door, you're supposed to shine the light just to make sure that they are there, and then close the door. The lights are very, very important because you have a very limited amount of power in this game. The power really is your biggest enemy. You might also notice sometimes Freddy will look straight at you when both Bonnie and Chica leave the stage. So Bonnie will always approach from the left hallway, and likewise Chica will also approach in a similar manner, except Chica will take the opposite route. She'll go down the right hallway. Once Chica has shown up at the hall corner, you're supposed to just check the lights just to see if Chica's moved, and of course she'll show up at your door, flash the light, and then close it to prevent her from getting in. After a few seconds, Bonnie and Chica will eventually move away, and they'll go back to their starting positions to repeat the cycle again. However, there are some instances in which Bonnie might just sit there and take a few seconds to leave. Also, I don't know if that's a PlayStation issue or what, or the console ports, but I closed the door and Bonnie just didn't do anything. I guess maybe I did it fast enough, but who's to say for sure? There are some instances in which Bonnie and Chica might be at your office at the same time, which does cause a lot of power to be lost, but the next animatronic is Foxy. Now, from time to time, you'll notice Foxy leaving Pirate's Cove. Once Foxy has left, Foxy will then run down the hallway and attempt to attack you. If the door is closed, nothing will happen, and I did use cheats for some of the Night 7 footage just to get some footage that I had missed previously. But Foxy is really just designed to keep you looking at the cameras. Speaking of looking at cameras, you also have Freddy. You can stall Freddy by checking the cameras and making sure you stunt his progress. Once he makes it to the East Hall corner, he will refuse to leave. But Freddy's biggest threat is when the power goes out. When the power goes out, Freddy will arrive at the left hallway. This is an incredible amount of tension that this game manages to create, particularly if you're really close to 6 a.m. Next up, we're going to be talking about some of the cool stuff that happens, such as hallucinations. Now, as nights 4 and 5 progress, you might notice Bonnie and Chica begin to twitch as soon as they're in the corners, accompanied by a very distorted, garbling noise. And it's really effective, and it adds a little bit of creepiness factor to it. And then there's the occasional hallucinations that will occur. These hallucinations are completely harmless and they don't do much, but it really will spook you out, especially like if nothing really is happening at the time. And then there's all the secrets on the cameras, such as the crying children posters or some of the rules in the left or right hallways being replaced by newspaper clippings that help to flesh out the lore. These secrets are really, really interesting, and as I said, they've helped to flesh out the lore without making it too obvious. There's also the poster of Freddy ripping his face off, which I think is really interesting, as well as the hidden camera in which the endoskeleton begins looking directly at the camera. Of course, these are probably just hallucinations, but Bonnie looking directly into the backstage camera is still really creepy even to this day. But from a gameplay perspective, you can basically beat each night the same way. Of course, nights 3, 4, and 5 become much more aggressive. Foxy and Freddy become active, particularly Freddy, who's going to be your biggest problem in this game. Now, you don't have a lot of power in this game. Your power is very, very limited. So your goal is to conserve as much power as you can. Of course, you want to close the doors so none of the animatronics can get in. But if you close your doors, you drain a lot of power, and power is very, very sacred. So you might have a lot of instances in which you get into a situation like this, in which you only have 6% power. Foxy is just about to leave, and then you see the 6 a.m. screen, and you're either filled with an incredible sense of relief or just, okay, now it's only going to get worse from here. That feeling is really incredible, particularly the closer you are to 6 a.m. It just feels really great. One thing Five Nights at Freddy's is just great at doing is making you feel vulnerable. You really feel like you're just under a constant threat all the time. You want to use the doors to defend yourself, but you can't, because if you do, you're going to run out of power. To maximize your chances of surviving, you have to keep yourself vulnerable by keeping the doors up. But you can't just sit there and camp the entire time because Foxy is there to prevent it. When the cameras are up, you're vulnerable to Bonnie and Chica, but you have to flip the cameras up not only to stall Freddy, but also to make sure Foxy stays inside of Pirate's Cove. Because Foxy will emerge and eventually run down the hallway, and then he'll get into your office, killing you. So one thing Five Nights at Freddy's is just great at doing is creating this sense of tension, this suspense, where you have to keep yourself vulnerable in order to stay alive. And I think that it is just absolutely spectacular. On top of that, the sound design is absolutely incredible as well. Not only does this game sound great, not only is Freddy's music box great, but from time to time you'll hear this random circus music begin playing, or you'll even hear Foxy singing. And from time to time you'll hear this occasional thud. And you don't know what these sounds are or where they come from, but you're hearing them. And it does add a lot to the atmosphere of this game outside of the usual buzzing of the office. This game just sounds incredible, and the way it uses sound to perpetuate this feeling of tension, this feeling of suspense, is absolutely incredible. And in terms of the overall game design, this is a very simple game. There's not much to it. Once you know how the game works, you'll understand that it's a point-and-click game, basically more or less a slideshow. But the way that it goes about its simplicity is just immaculate. So on top of the idea of having to keep you vulnerable to stay alive, and in combination with the incredible sound design, and not to mention the really greatly designed characters, and also the lore, the mystery, the mystique behind it just made this game such a fascinating game when it first came out. I'll never forget when this game was extremely popular back in August of 2014, back when I was 13 years old. I was fascinated by this game. I was immersed in the world of Five Nights at Freddy's. I was intrigued by the mystique and the mystery of this game. I just thought it was just so fascinating, and I was completely obsessed with it. And at the time, of course, I was kind of too scared to play it because the sound really got to me. I just thought it sounded scary, and truthfully, it still does. But now I kind of know how the game works. I know all the systems. I know how to keep Freddy and Foxy away by using certain strategies. But there's no denying Five Nights at Freddy's is an incredible game. Even 9 years later, this game still holds up really, really well. And this excels in that horror aspect, where it's got tension, it's got suspense, it makes you feel dread, and most importantly, it has that feeling of, what if I mess up? Like, what if somehow Bonnie manages to get in anyway? Or what if Freddy sneaks into my office? The way this game might make you second guess yourself sometimes, even if you're extremely confident, is just undeniably beautiful. And even to this day, I still think Five Nights at Freddy's is a spectacular horror game. Of course, this game isn't perfect, and perhaps no game even is, but the way this game goes about its settings, its characters, it's just really, really interesting. And I think the art style is really, really cool too. I really just have nothing but good things to say about this game. I loved the story behind it too. I loved the idea of a man going around murdering children and stuffing their bodies into animatronic suits. And of course, there's this really big mystery as to who's doing it, why is he doing it, are these animatronics that are possessed? And you create this really interesting idea of this restaurant was closed down because people were complaining about the odors and all this stuff. There's a bunch of mystery to it, and it's intriguing, and it makes you interested in what's going on, and you're thinking, well, God, I got to figure out who that guy is. I got to figure out, what he's doing. And of course, now in hindsight, we know all this lore and all the story now. But back when this game first came out, it was just intriguing. It was so interesting. It was so fascinating. And you wanted to learn about it. Once you finish this game, you do unlock a 6th night, and if you finish the 6th night, you unlock what is called a custom night, which allows you to customize the AI. You can make it as easy or as aggressive as you want. But Scott decided to put a little Easter egg in this game. There were rumors that if you put the AI on 1987, you would get a secret ending if you finished it. Of course, that wasn't true, but you do get this, so that's pretty cool. Overall, Five Nights at Freddy's is still a great, great horror game. Unfortunately, I've never actually seen Golden Freddy. I hope maybe one day I will. But all things considered, Five Nights at Freddy's is still fantastic. It still holds up really well. I think this is an 8 out of 10. Next up is FNAF 2.